Hello, and good morning. It's 11 o'clock-ish. I'm Nick from the Online Wool Show, and I'm hoping that we are beaming live onto the Online Wool Show Facebook page. You may be watching this live now, and I hope you are, or you may be watching a recording on Facebook or on our website, or maybe on our YouTube channel, whichever it is. So if you didn't catch the interview I did earlier with some people that run yarn and wool shops, both online and in real life, that'll be on there as well. Now we have 3 more people to talk to, and the theme of this session, sorry, I can't see anybody, is hand dyers. So all the people we'll talk to now are hand dyers of various different levels of experience, but they're all really good, and they're all on the Online Wool Show, and you can see their products on there. If you want to text a question, there's the number, there's the website, and there's the agenda for the rest of the day. So let me quickly introduce them, and then I'll talk to them a little bit more, and we kind of go around in a circle. It's not just 10 minutes on one person and 10 minutes on the other. So Tina, can we introduce, we may be introducing both Tina and Floyd. Tina is from a company called Tina and Floyd, and here we are. We are seeing Tina and Floyd. Hello, Tina and Floyd.
Floyd, my monster, you have to look the way. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Floyd. That way. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, well, half here, sort of. My lovely border collie, herding dog. Yeah, and I'm Tina.
Yes.
Michael Cedar always says that he's the boss, actually, because he brings the sheep. He brings them to me. That's his job.
Yeah, we'll talk about Tina's role. Yeah, we'll talk about Floyd's role in the organisation a bit later. But that's Tina. She's down in London. Let's whiz up 100 miles north, maybe, to Rutland. Another person from Rutland. We had somebody from Rutland earlier. It's like,
I know. You had Julie.
Yeah, it's like Rutland Weekend
She's my
Television.
neighbor. She's my close neighbor, actually.
Yeah, hello, Erica of Debonair. How are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
If you've been to wool shows, then you will have seen Erica and probably Tina. And we're going to talk more to Erica obviously soon, but someone you may not have seen on the wool show circuit, if you go to wool shows much, because I think you've Scott from Crystal Yarn, did you say you'd only done one show so far?
Well, I did Kendal Wool Gathering last year, and then I've done smaller one-day events, Yorkshire Yarn Festival as well at the end of last year. But yeah, mostly Kendal Wool Gathering was my first 2-day event. Yeah,
how did it go?
It went very well. I don't really have a lot to compare it to, with not being on the circuit very long, but it went fine for me, and I enjoyed it. It was a good day, so it was good to see everyone else's stalls and things as well.
Yeah, it's always good to sell something. My wife once did she does a stall, Sheep on Mars. We once did a thing called Derby Folk Festival, and for a whole day she did not sell one thing.
Gosh.
Sorry, have I completely frozen?
No. No, you're still moving.
Oh, right.
You had bumps, yeah. But we all had these days when you really think, why am I here? Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. We'll talk about that later. What sort of life are we living? Standing in it's either a freezing cold cattle shed or an extremely boiling hot sports gym. And you think, oh my God, what a life. Anyway, Tina, let's come back to you because we briefly saw Floyd. Tell me, first of all, you're from Germany, so how did you end up in Britain running a wool business?
Well, good question. It's actually 2 parts in a way. Ending up in Britain because of Michael, partner for, oh goodness me, 22 years, 23 years. I hope I get that right somehow. And he's a software developer, and he was working in Berlin. Well, first in Düsseldorf, then come over via friends to Berlin, met there, and I was still studying biology at university, and studies take longer in Germany than they do here. Yeah, and after a few years I followed when I was free. Yeah, that's why Britain, why London, and well, London because of Michael with the software developing for the city. Yeah, and the wool bit is I actually started spinning as a child, pretty much the same time I started knitting. I had all parents, and they went through the war, and my mother was evacuated in East Prussia, and the ladies she was evacuated with had to flee from the Russians at the end of the war, and ended up in West Berlin, and she had already lost her husband. The Russians had taken him away, and she had carried her spinning wheel from East Prussia to Berlin. And I never knew whether she took it as a friend or to support her family, but she taught me. She died when I was 9. I had learned knitting in school parallelly. We did it all in art classes, and yeah, at some point knitting I never stopped, and at some point about 20 years ago, I just went properly back into spinning, but more as a hobby and dyeing as well. And yeah, I've also been shepherding as a teenager. In yeah, in biology, we went to an exhibition. The specialty of the exhibitions were sheep. I fell in love, and then went over to my father's little village in Hessen and started shepherding there in the school holidays. So that was kind of from 17, 18 on. It's always only been sort of a hobby, so I would never call myself a shepherd, never. That's a whole different ball game. But I'm training Floyd, and yeah, so that's the wool. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I've got to come back and talk to you a bit more about that, because so it really grew out. The business grew out of the spinning. Out
of the spinning, out of lifelong knitting, and at some point, well, I had when I had Floyd, and I took him up to various farms for training, and I saw Sarah from Mayfield's farm chucking her wool, the fleeces, rare breed fleeces, into kennels as dog beds. I nearly howled. And she said, oh, she doesn't get anything for it. And it's actually more expensive to get it also to the, even the white fleeces to the wool board. And she had lots of colored fleeces, because, yeah. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm sure I can get her a better price if I take on her wool and then start processing it. So I started with all the Mayfield's yarn wool, Mayfield's wool, and which I had washed and carded at Paul's from Halifax spinning mill, and then I sort of I started spinning that and dyeing that, both natural dyes and acid dyes, and yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And I gave myself a year of production before starting on shows, because I thought I might. Well, you have to have something to sell, and you can't just come with kind of 20 balls of yarn and say, oh, is that enough for the show? So, and that's why at some point I started also buying in spun yarn and dyeing that, because it just,
yeah. So I'll talk. I mean, you're all dyers, so I'll talk later about the dyeing. Well, not the technicalities of the dyeing process, but a bit about dyeing, what inspires you. We'll move on to that. First of all, let's learn a bit more about Erica, who I've seen around the show circuit for quite a few years.
Too much, Nick.
Yes, probably too. But I've never known why she came from America, because I'm not nosy. So Erica, let's hear a potted history.
We moved here in the mid-90s and decided to stay sort of 3 years after our 3-year supposed stint was up, and it's home now. Yeah, what can I say? I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, and what,
were
you always a knitter or a crocheter?
I knit and crocheted ever since I can remember. Not sure if it was my mother, my aunt that taught me. My mother was a huge knitter. She did very intricate intarsia work, things completely out of her head. She's an artist, so she does all this amazing stuff. I actually moved into needlepoint for most of until I started this business, really. And this business actually was started with selling the hand-painted needlepoint canvases that I sourced from the States and threads. And in my sort of whole process of sourcing threads for the needlepoint, got into the yarn business and moved further in that. And at the same time, I started picking up my knitting again, and quickly discovered, this was sort of around 2008, 2009, that there was not sort of the range of really great yarns that you could get in the States, hand-dyed yarns. And so I said, okay, well, let's add this to the mix too. And that's how sort of the whole interest in hand-dyed yarns started. I started off working with a cashmere company in Italy, a company in South America, which I then became the designer for, that did hand-dyed yarns. It was really a La Plata. They're unfortunately no longer around. And then I started working with hand dyers in the UK to sell along with my other offerings. After a couple of strange things happened, I decided to get into hand dyeing myself about 7 years ago, I think. And sort of the rest is history. Now I sort of focus 90% on my own hand dyes. I still do, I still have a line of silks. I've worked with a company in India for years, developing a embellished silk line and a couple of other things. But really the main focus is on my own hand dyes, and it's the thing that I derive the most joy out of as well. Yeah.
Do you think it's something to do with your mother being an artist? Do you feel it's kind of an artistic thing as well?
Well, I mean, I think that I've always been very attuned to color. I think, you know, sort of a thing that I remember when I was a child, her saying, you know, look at the grass, it's not green, it's a whole bunch of colors. Look at the sky, it's not blue, it's a bunch of colors. And so my whole life I've been very attuned to color, very attuned to color. And I think that that's one of my great strengths as a dyer is my color sensibility.
Yes. Yes, I think that's a really important. And what I like about the different, I mean, you go to wool shows and you can look on the online wool show website, and there are a lot of hand dyes, but they've all got their own different take on things. There are some are brighter, some are like less bright, some are different.
Well, I mean, people are going to dye what they love. I certainly do. I do a lot of shows, and so I've got to spend a lot of time dyeing my stock colors, like the grays, and I love grays. Don't get me wrong, I really, really, really love grays. But you know, you do end up dyeing sort of your stock colors, and then you go off track and you dye what you love, and you know, you'll get these moments where that's all you want to do. You'll have an idea in your head and you go obsessed until you get it right.
Yeah,
completely obsessed. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Great. So we'll talk a bit later, I'm sure, about the dyeing and what inspires you. Scott, then. So hello, Scott. We've not met before. Hello.
That's me. Yeah.
Yes, and Scott is near Morecambe, am I right?
Yes, so I'm originally from around here, so I lived in Carnforth for my life, and then when I met my partner, we were living in Lancaster, which is just a couple of miles away, and now we've just bought our house in Heysham, which is right near the sea, so we're literally about 2 roads that walk away from the prom and everything, so it's nice and windy today.
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely to be. Oh, I would quite like to live by this. I mean, is it as nice as it sounds, living by the seaside?
Well, at the moment it's really windy, and because our house faces sort of where the shoreline is, we get battered by the wind. But you do get that sea air as well, that nice salty smell. So yeah, it's nice when you stick your head out the window.
Yeah. So how did you get into the whole wool business and hand dyeing?
Yeah, so I remember my mum teaching me how to basically knit. She used to knit when I was a toddler and make me cardigans and things like that when I was a toddler. But then I never really learned to knit or spin or crochet or anything like that. And then all of a sudden, about 3 years ago, I was like, oh, I was a bit bored. Every night it was the same sort of thing. I'll watch TV, I'll do this. And I just never seemed to feel fulfilled in what I was doing. So I thought, I'm going to learn to crochet. So I started crocheting. And then once I'd crocheted a bit, I thought, I really want to make a sweater. So I thought, I'll learn to knit. I'll make a sweater. That'll probably be it. I won't do any more. I made the sweater, and then I haven't stopped knitting since I made the sweater. And then I'm very much a 0 to 60 in about 10 seconds. So I decided I wanted to try dyeing. So partner's mum got me a little kit with a couple of skeins of yarn. And then the next thing I did is I bought 5 kilograms of yarn to dye as well, straight after. So that was it really. It was born from learning to crochet and then learning to knit. And then all of a sudden I wanted to try dyeing yarn, and I've not stopped doing that since either.
That's great. I'll come back to that, but this is the part of the show I call favourite product. So I think, and I hope you've all brought a favourite product along to show that is on sale on the online wool show. Tina, have you brought a favourite product?
I have. It's actually, it looks as if it's more than one, but it's only one because it sort of seems to be everybody's favorite. It's called Beach Huts, and it's a yarn. I'm dyeing that with 3 different colors, but it comes out depending on where I'm still collecting, depending on where the dye lands in all these colors. Trying to hold that up to the camera.
Wow.
So it's a fingering weight yarn, and it's got 30% silk, 30% silk, 70% merino, and it's flowing extremely nicely. So it can be anything for shawls, you know, and really nice jerseys, short, everything which you want to drape a little. I would never knit that with too tight a needle, so that you actually use the ability of the yarn. So anything which you want to do, knit or crochet in a lacy way or in a loose way, it's very lovely for summer jerseys as well, you know, or these sort of little jackets which you just want to put on in the evening, or a shawl you want to wrap yourself into. And I've named it Beach Huts because it's really literally any color. It just reminded me of that. Yeah, hang on, I tried to get it sort of better into the picture again. That's sort of halfway visible.
Yes, we can see that.
Somehow I had just had these skeins of that in my competition for the giveaway, you know, for the 500. Just sort of. So on the one hand, you've got these greens and teal in there, and sometimes it just can be like that. But the nice thing about it is that they all go with each other, and you can sort of choose whether when you need a bigger garment, whether you want the color sort of be isolated and in stripes, or whether you want to do sort of 2 rows of each and turn. So yeah, so that's my favorite one.
I'm guessing, sorry, Tina. I know you sell hand spun yarn that you've hand spun and then hand dyed. Is that one that you've spun?
No. I couldn't sell that for £15 if that would be hand spun, because it's fingering weight. That's a few hours more. That's yarn I bought in and then dyed.
Yeah. Are you gonna?
I picked a non-hand spun because we're in the dyeing section and not in the spinning section.
Sorry. Oh yes, we'll do a bit of spinning. Yes, we'll talk about. Yeah, I mean, although this is a hand dyed, I mean, it's not hand dyed yarn, so you can talk about hand dyed fibre. Do you do hand dyed fibre?
Oh yeah, got hand-dyed fiber all the time. I've got carded bats lying next to me. So this is that's 70% merino and 30% silk, some of which is Tussa silk just for structure and give it a bit more interest, and some of that is mulberry silk. And so that's wool which I've dyed and then blended together. So yes, it's all sorts of teal colors. Yeah. I'll dye anything that comes my way.
Yes. So Erica.
Plant fibers as well.
Erica, are you still? Yes. Favorite product?
It's got to be Squeal right now. My favorite product changes sort of seasonally. Here is one example. Squeal is a yak merino silk. yarn. I've got it in both 4-ply and a lace weight yarn. Here is a little bit knit up. This is a speckly one. And then I'm knitting a sweater right now in a solid, in a nice red here. This yarn is incredibly soft, but also incredibly robust. I am not usually a big fan of singles. I find that they tend to fall apart after a while. This, however, with the silk and the yak, seems to hold the whole thing together. I've knit about 5 projects with this so far. I've had it for about 2 years, and they are all looking really good right now. It speckles well. It's got a gray base, so it takes the yarn, the colors are very, very deep on it. You get a lot of depth. And so I love, love, love the colors, and I love the feel of it. I'm a big fan of soft yarns, but they've got to have some robustness to them and longevity.
Sorry, did you say it was yak and silk?
Yak, merino, and silk.
Yak, merino, and silk, yeah.
Yeah, and the 4-ply comes in 120 gram skeins. So it's got 480 meters, which means one is enough to do a really decent sized shawl. You know, sometimes with 4-plies with sort of 350 to 400 meters, you're sort of feeling like, I need another one. This one you can get yourself with one skein a nice project.
Do you design the shawls as well?
I do. I do very simple projects usually that bring out the yarn the best, I think. I'm a big fan of TV knitting, I gotta admit. There's a lot of unbelievably great designers in the world that do wonderful, difficult projects. And I personally prefer just to really relax with my knitting, yeah, and not pay much attention to it.
Is it mainly shawls you sell?
No, I do a lot of sweater patterns as well. I try to bring out 2 to 3 sweater patterns a year. I'm a sort of like, depending on the show schedule, you might see a lot more sweater patterns from me this year. In fact, I would sure that you will. I'm working on 3 right now, but typically, yeah, it is shawls. I mean, I have a far bigger portfolio of shawl patterns than I do sweater patterns.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll come back to Erica soon and see some more products, hopefully. Scott, a favourite product?
Yeah, so my favourite at the moment, it's more of a colourway than an actual product. So it's this one, which is, I called it Melancholy. And I actually donate a portion of the sales for this to Calm, which is a campaign against living miserably. So it's like a lovely blue with purpley and deeper blue speckles on it. I dye it on multiple bases. So it's either on this one's merino and Blueface Leicester and nylon, and I also do it on a double knit merino and nylon, and also my non-superwash bases that I have as well. But yeah, no, I just love. I dye a lot of non-superwash, and I struggled to get speckles on non-superwash because when you speckle superwash yarn, it just takes the dye really great. So this one I'm quite proud of because I managed to get it onto non-superwash yarns. So it's like one of my favourites at the moment. So I just keep repeating it on different bases just to try it out. But yeah, no, that's my favourite product.
Great. So we'll come back to Scott soon for some more products. So let's leave the products for a little while and let's talk about the dyeing process. Tina, should we come back to you? Is there a particular way that you've developed to do it, or do you have different ways of dyeing?
I do have different ways of dyeing. I do natural dyes as well, but I'm sort of shoved them to the side now, especially now, because we're currently at home, like everybody is, and I do my dyeing normally out at Michael's parents, because we're just in a very small house, as you might have seen on the video. So I'm also normally dye in trays, which I shove in the oven. But currently, being in Kynance, I've bought myself a microwave, so I'm doing some skeins in the microwave when I'm doing speckles and everything. Then I've gone also now to some good old-fashioned kettle dyeing. So just doing it stovetop, which I normally don't do very much. I do it usually more with fibers than with yarns, but due to space, it's currently the best way to do it. I don't dye many solids. I normally go for some variation in the yarn, and that's due to the time when, as a schoolgirl, didn't have that much pocket money, and you sort of bought one skein at a time to for your project, and I ended up with sort of striped things because obviously the dye lot wasn't there anymore. And so if you've got yarns which have a sort of a bit of a natural variation, you can always match them. So I'm trying to dye colors where people can come back to me after 2 years and say, can you dye me something that matches that? And I can do that. It's sort of more user friendly in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Erica, can I bring you in again? Do you have a set way of dyeing, or have you developed?
No, I have no one set way of dyeing. Obviously, I use a lot of different techniques depending on what I'm trying to do. I use kettle dyeing for a lot of my semi-solids. I use low immersion techniques, high immersion techniques. I used to hand paint yarn more often than I do now. Sometimes I'll get a request for somebody for an old colorway and I'll have to go back to that. But within those kettle dyeing techniques and high immersion, low immersion techniques, there's obviously a lot of different ways you do it. And I've got about 15 different ways I speckle yarn.
Oh, wow, yes. And yours, I mean, how much of it is experimental and how much is it controlled?
Well, obviously, when you're doing something new, it's experimental. I'd say, given the fact that I've got to be very disciplined, well, historically, I had to be very disciplined about getting my inventory ready for shows, that most of it was controlled, pretty controlled. And you find that you have to keep repeating colors because people want them. And, you know, I can't tell you the number of times people will come to you and say, oh God, I saw it, you know, 6 months ago, you had this great speckled blah-bitty blah, and where is it? And well, you know, so, I mean, obviously there's always new things coming in, but you got to keep up with your old colors as well, your old popular ones. I change stuff around seasonally. Obviously, and add new things every season. And occasionally you'll have just these moments when you're sitting there, typically at sort of midnight, and you go, like, I'm really sick of gray. I'm going to do something different, and you know, something great, or hopefully great, will be born. So, yeah.
And are you one of these people that's very organized, and after you've done the dyeing, you write down exactly what you did, so you can?
I absolutely have to. I absolutely have to. I have 3 notebooks at this stage like this. One of my projects in this whole sort of period is to actually try to computerize it all. It'll never happen, but you know, I can always dream. I can always dream. I got lots of projects I can dream about.
Yeah. Scott, are you very experimental or more controlled, and do you write it all down and keep notes?
Yeah, so I'm very regimented and scientific about it. I know what weights to weigh all my dyes out, and I know exactly what colours to do and how to do them, because I have been very experimental when I started off creating new bases and creating new colourways, and then I have to make sure that I've documented everything. So like you were saying, Erica, about computerising it, I have Evernotes on my phone, so I can go on there and I can find the colourway and then exactly which colours go in it and the percentages of the dyes and things like that to create it. So I'm very much that when I know what I'm going to dye and I know exactly what I'm going to do, know which dyes it's going to be and everything, I can't just, I know one dyer who she's very, she'll just chuck it in, she'll know the basics and she'll just change it a little bit, add a bit more dye into it this time and things like that. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't relinquish that control of knowing exactly what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And as Erica and Tina were saying, if people want the same colour again 6 months later, you've got to be able to know.
I mean, obviously you can never recreate everything, but you can come pretty damn close if but you know, conditions always change, and I've moved 3 times in the past 3 years, and the water difference makes a huge difference in your color. and you got to spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to. I'm not a chemist, and I don't approach this from a chemistry viewpoint, which some people actually do. And I'm much more of a feel and understand how the colors react on certain yarn bases. But every time I move, I've had this whole experimental stage come back in to try to get my grays the way I want them, for example, or my blues, whatever.
So you don't end up going back to, was it Berkshire you used to live in to get a bit of water?
Not going to happen.
Yeah, I can't get the right colour with Rutland water. I need to go.
Well, no, actually, I'm liking Rutland water the best.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think it's the cleanest. I don't know. As I said, I don't approach this from a chemist. I'm sure there's complete chemistry answer for all of this, but
have you
ever the person to ask.
Yeah. Sorry, have you ever tried natural dyes?
Eons ago. And I'm sure that they've all evolved. I frankly found that the stuff I had to put on the yarn to get the dye to stick was horrendous and far more toxic than anything that I use acid dyes. That acid dyes dyeing technique involves with you're fixing it either with vinegar or citric acid, and I use both of those, by the way. And so, and the other thing too is I'm not sure how long they last. I don't want, and third reason why natural dyes are not for me, it's really not my color sensibility, to be honest with you. I'm much more of a clear, deeper hued type of person than the sort of heathery, modelly type of thing.
Yeah. Scott, are you an acid dye person or a?
No, I'm an acid dyer. When I started, we were in a little rented house. We had this tiny little kitchen, so it was all on the stovetop, and we've got 2 cats, so it's very much it has to be acid dye, because at least then I know that there's not going to be any like poisonous mordants and things for the natural dyes flying around. Now where I live now, if you can see just the light behind me, there's a door just into a sunroom there. And that's basically a little 6 foot by 6 foot room, so it's just me in there, and the only window that I can open is the sliding patio door. I stick to acid dyes just because I'm so close to being where we eat and drink and things that I couldn't risk it.
Yeah, but Tina, you're an acid dye, a natural dyer as well as using.
I do anything. I do acid dyes and procyon, depending on whether I'm doing plant or but I'm doing I'm naturally curious, and I like learning things. So at some point I started also with natural dyes, but I'm entirely with Erica and also Scott. I'm only using alum as a mordant, and that's the only one. That's the only one which I would ever use. I know I'm missing out on colors on the others. I do not see that. I really do not want to add copper or cadmium or anything to that. I think that's pretty criminal. Yeah. If I'm dyeing natural dyes, I'm doing it only on natural fiber. I do absolutely not see the point on nylon. Why would I go for nylon and then do natural dyes somehow? Some people, especially down here in London, want it without actually necessarily knowing that it's not that much environmentally friendly. And also people very often say, oh, it's not chemistry, but it is chemistry. It is just... It is organic chemistry, and it's pretty much apart from the mordant, obviously. It's pretty much the same thing. Everything is based on chemistry and on a chemical reaction. Otherwise, you won't get a dye in. So people shouldn't be fooled that natural necessarily means environmentally friendly. I actually think I dye more environmentally friendly when I'm exhausting a dye bath and acid dyes. It's a bit more acidic. And that's about all that is left in the dye bath. I've actually tested it. I did study chemistry as well as biology, so I didn't finish the degree in chemistry, but that's another point. But I did 3 years.
Leg up then.
What? Say again?
You've got a leg up then. Understand the chemistry behind it all.
well, sometimes I try not to, but it's because you can really think a bit too much about it all sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
So we've had a question from Christine, who's watching. Hello, Christine. What's your best happy accident? So when you've been dying, what's been a good happy accident that maybe you've kept that way of doing things, or that technique, or that colorway? Who wants to jump in for that?
I think a lot of the time when
Happy
you're experimenting, a lot of the times it is happy accidents. So because you don't go into it with, you'll have a vision in your head of what you want it to look like, but then the yarn will do something different, or the dye will do something different. So I think when you're experimenting, a lot of the times it is a happy accident that you then go to reproduce. When you experiment as well, sometimes you'll get exactly what you wanted and what you had envisioned in your head, but other times it'll just be a little bit different, but it's something completely unique to itself that you then end up recreating. And a lot of the time, some of my yarns that I dye, I go, I don't really like this, but I go to sell it anyway, because even if I don't like it, other people will, and then other people love that it's not sort of my usual style because it's a little bit different, and then I end up recreating that because it's something that other people want. So I think you've got to have a happy accident and relinquish some control and go with it sometimes.
Okay, there's another question, but just before I turn to that, can we see some more products? Erica, have you got more products there you can show us?
Yeah, I've brought one of my favorite summer knitting yarns. Oh, it's pink. Surprise, surprise. Is shimmer lace. I don't know if you can see the little shimmers there, but
yeah, it shows.
This is a merino silk lace yarn, 800 meters, knits up like this. Here's another pink example. Whoops, wrong side. Well, so very, very subtle. This yarn, so here's a solid, here's just to give you an idea of some different dyeing techniques. Here's one that's sort of more watercolory, and here's a speckled one. But I really like this yarn for the summer. And since we're almost in summer, I'm sort of focusing on summer now.
Yes, I should say that Erica did a couple of really nice videos, which are on the website. If you want to go, they're on the page which lists all the videos, and also can be accessed from Erica's Debonair page.
Thanks for the plug.
Yes, well, why not? Why not? I'll do an occasional plug.
We like plugs. Like plugs.
Tina as well has done some videos of her products and a spinning demonstration, a mini lesson on spinning slubs. Is it called slubs? To create kind of art.
Slubs.
Yeah, to create. And I think, is that the spinning wheel you used just behind you there?
Oh, I didn't know you can see a spinning wheel.
I've got my eagle eyes. Yeah.
Spinning wheel somewhere? Hang on.
Yeah.
Yes. Good question. Can I say I'm selling spinning wheels? I just said I'm selling spinning wheels. So as I've got about 12, and depending what I'm in the mood for, so I'm spinning on all of them pretty much parallel. So each of them's got a different product on usually. Yeah, but I think I did the slabs on that worker bee. Yeah, this spins very well. It's you want a big enough bobbin, otherwise it just fills up in no time at all. And you do not want to sell yarns which all of them have at least one knot, sort of just to make up 100 grams.
So I think it would be nice in a week or two's time just to do a kind of interview on spinning, and if you would like to come back, Tina, and we'll try and get a couple more people.
Absolutely, love to.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I don't know whether anybody of you is aware of the Chelsea Fringe. The Chelsea Fringe is an alternative Chelsea flower show, and they've got the day on today. And I've recorded 2 videos for Growing Space, which is a charity who's doing school gardens in public places. and they should be 2 uploaded. And I was just thinking to send them on to you later on for your website as well.
Oh, yes, that would be good. And thanks for plugging another organisation's website. Yes.
Is that all right? Sorry.
You've done it now.
It's all charity.
Oh, it's okay.
No, well, I was telling them about us as well. So I've done it both ways.
Yeah. Scott, can I bring you in? Have you got another product there?
Yeah, so another one, this is just a solid dye that I've done on my Corriedale base, which is a non-superwash base. I love this one. It's lovely and soft, but it's also great for socks as well as a non-nylon version for socks. I've knit plenty of socks in it as well, and it's held up the time for socks, wearing them around the house and then shoes and things like that. Yeah, no, that's another one of my favourite bases that I've got.
Lovely, thank you. So Scott with his crystal yarn stall is on the website, Erica with her debonair stall, and Tina with her Tina and Floyd stall. So if you want to check out the products further, see that. And we've just got time, I think, to squeeze in another viewer question. How professional is that? And this comes from Karen, who is new to dyeing and wants to know, have you got a top tip for somebody new to dyeing who'd like to jump in with a top tip? Don't
soak your yarn well.
Sorry?
Soak your yarn well.
Soak it well.
Soak it well. Don't cool it down in a rush.
Yes.
I'd say.
Erica?
Yeah, I agree with those. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Enjoy the process. Experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Experiment.
And if you don't like it, learn how to over dye.
Perfect. That is exactly. Yeah.
So start pale and work darker.
Yeah. Don't dye it black first.
Not necessarily. Do
Black
what you want to do. Do what you want to do. You do what you want to do. You'll have fun with it. Do what you want to do.
Scott, did you have another tip? You're quite more recent learning dyeing. Any top?
Yeah, well, like I just said, if you don't like it, learn how to over dye.
Yeah.
Only because you get such a different range of colours and depth to the colours as well from over dyeing it. But yeah, no, like everyone else.
Would you then deliberately over dye then sometimes, not just to cover up something you don't like? Yeah.
So you can dye a bit, like dye one colour and then. I don't do a lot of it, but if you said dyed blue, and then I've just recently actually just done some where it was a blue yarn that I didn't really like, but I put a bit of yellow on it and then it turned it a bit of a tealy green, and then I put a bit of black in there as well, and it came out this deep sort of teal, and it just gives it that different depth because you get different areas that are a bit greener than other bits where the blue was darker on that area. So it just creates a different range, and there's loads of dyers out there that do amazing over-dyed and saturated
colours. Do you over-dye from dry then, or is it from wet? Or is it still wet?
Wet, yeah. The last time I did it, I soaked it, I put the dye in, let that exhaust, and then I put some more dye in the pan to let that exhaust. But you can, I have dyed a yarn, dried a yarn, soaked a yarn, and over-dyed it again when I wanted to add something different to it.
Yeah. So there's so many different ways of doing it, so many different techniques, which is why you can see 30 different hand dyers at a wool show.
Yeah.
They've all got...
Everything's different.
Yeah.
Everything's different.
Really
and the thing is, someone who starts today might come up with a new way that no one else has ever thought about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. So Karen or anybody else out there, we've given you lots of tips. Maybe you'll be on the online wool show. Taking all the business away from our lovely dyers who are here with me today. So thank you very much, Tina and Erica and Scott, for a really good interview. I've learned more about dyeing than I've learned by living with a dyer. My wife's hand dyers. We obviously never talk.
Thank you.
We never talk hand dyeing, but we always talk wool. Okay, So if you enjoyed this interview and you've been watching live, we've got another one in about 15 minutes at 12 o'clock. That one's on accessories and wearables. So people who make little bits of jewellery or jackets or clothes. Yeah, jackets and clothes.
Fun.
Yes. So thank you guys, and it's been great talking to you. If you want to watch the recording later, it'll be available. Okay, so thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.